Welcome to the Trigger Warning Talk podcast, where we have uncensored conversations, we exchange information, and we provide a ton of resources for the listeners and the viewers of this podcast. We're streaming on all major platforms. You can watch these interviews also in two places: Spotify, the free version, or you can go to our YouTube channel, which is Pending Consulting Solutions LLC. I'm your fireman CEO and also your host. We have a great topic today with our siblings, our beloved family members that graciously are telling their stories. We talk about the difficult conversations because, again, this is Trigger Warning Talk podcast. We got our sister Claire and Ashley and our brother Albert back in the building. I want to give you some disclaimers before we get started, and then we'll just jump right into our topic today, which is one bite at a time, led by our sister Claire, who graciously is going to have the mic. She's ready. She's always ready. That's her military background. Always ready, right?
Absolutely.
Right. If you're triggered at any point during this podcast and you need help immediate help, please call 911. That'll get you police, fire, and EMS. Those are mandated reporters, and they will start all the documentation process to get you the resources you need. You don't have an immediate need, but you still need help with domestic violence, sexual-based offenses, trafficking, or anything related to any true crime or missing persons. We have links and the phone numbers for those agencies. If you need help with suicidal ideation, know somebody that's suicidal or wherever some behavioral health problem, you can call 988 here in the United States, available 24/7, and it's toll free. If you need help outside of the U.S. for any emergency, you can call. In the UK, it's 999. Outside of the UK, like in Switzerland, it's 143. If you have any issues with substance abuse, whether it's drugs or alcohol, or you're a supporter, we provide the numbers and websites for Alcoholics Anonymous, Narcotics Anonymous, and Al-Anon. On this Trigger Warning Talk podcast, this is presented by Spotify for podcasters and my company, Pending Consulting Solutions LLC. This episode entitled Sibling Bonds, One Bite at a Time. I want to give the mic to Miss Claire because she has a very interesting story that she wants to share with us and her siblings. The mic is yours.
When my mom, whenever we went through something, well, we were about to go through something difficult, she asked us, how do you eat an elephant? And at first that kind of startled me, or, it always kind of shook me up a bit, of course, because we all pretty much love animals. And I was like, I don't want to eat an elephant. But she said one bite at a time. And of course that makes sense. You have a huge mountainous task in front of you and you have to get it done. So just one step at a time. I've applied that, of course, in various situations in my life. And I know this process of healing and just understanding what we went through, it's like that. One podcast at a time, one accomplishment at a time, one, like touching one person at a time in order to get this message out here. Do any of you guys, Albert and Ashley, you guys remember Mom ever saying that at all?
I don't.
I guess it's something that stuck with me.
Yeah.
I saw you shake your head. No.
There's a lot that you guys remember that I just have blocked out, and not to say that was a bad thing to need to block out, but I don't. My childhood memories are kind of like the Matrix. They come and go. Some things seem real. Some things seem fake. So it's a little bit like a dream, a nightmare. It's kind of all over the place.
Well, we don't really use a scalpel when we repress memories. It's more like a machete. So
I like that. You need to put that on the shirt, Albert. We'll talk later.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, so, that's all I have to say about that. I feel like maybe we can talk about the steps that we've taken to move forward in our healing process. Each of us.
If I could respond to that, I've been meaning for 3 weeks to put up a social media post kind of on the point you're making. They say feel to heal, but feeling sometimes hurts. And I think it's okay to hit the snooze button at times. So that was a post I was gonna make because it's like one bite at a time. And then this year with my presentations, I've started to change my emphasis from trying to find every person in the class that could possibly have anything negative about my presentation to if I impacted one person, that's sufficient enough. And I don't think I shared it on this podcast previously, but I was presenting earlier in the year on mental health, and there was a gentleman, and I was talking about mental health and suicide, and there was a gentleman in the audience that, based on my presentation, felt like it was a calling for him to speak about his son who had recently committed suicide, and his sister-in-law had committed suicide. So for me in that class, I reached him. I'm good with everything else. That was my one bite. So from the perspective of the work that I do, just like you said, one podcast at a time, or reaching one person at a time, and then also for myself, knowing that this is a process of healing. So like, it wasn't until this calendar year with this podcast and everything that's jumping off that I realized that I'm still pretty screwed up. I mean, I think I've always known that, but Ashley will probably relate, right? You think I'm pretty messed up, I think, but like realizing that I've got a lot of healing to do and I actually have to heal. And that's not a masculine thing to say, like, I need to heal, or, being ex-law enforcement or attorney to acknowledge that. But yeah, I got some work to do. And if I continue to do that work, I can be a better husband, better father. So, but it's a process, and having, I guess, the fortitude to acknowledge that it's going to take time, and giving myself patience and grace to be able to do that. One bite at a time. I love that topic, Claire. That's what I'm working on. And so I took some really large bites this last week, so I'm kind of taking a little bit of a break and sharing the food that I have. And let's not say an elephant, like a real live elephant. Let's make it like a chocolate elephant or something like that.
Yeah, that's awesome. Or gummy elephant.
Gummy, yes. Okay, yep. So now we have to insert that song, Gummy, 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 Gummy Bear.
Oh my God.
The closing credits.
Yeah, I'll add it to the end of the video.
Yeah, very good. What are your thoughts, Ashley?
Well, one bite at a time. This isn't about us, but yesterday morning, I got to clinical, found out that one of my classmates would be her last day, and we've still got 3 months left, about 2.5 months. So I asked her why, and she refused to respond, but her friend, my other classmate, responded for her, and she said, you could tell her I don't want to say it. And she said that her dad has been sexually assaulting her. So she said she's dropping out, and she's going to try to get another semester. And that's been going on with her at least all this semester, because at the beginning she was failing, and I didn't know why. And she has ADHD. She always talks excessively. She'll follow around the wound nurse, and she'll stay with her all day. They give her other tasks, but she ignores those and just stays with the wound nurse because she can relate to her, and she really enjoys her company, and she's kind of checked out. And so yesterday I had to report the situation. We were passing meds, and she went with my other instructor to go pass the medication, and I asked my instructor, who just became a nurse practitioner, do you know that today is going to be her last day? And she said, I had no idea. I told her what was going on, and she said, I have to report this. But she's Indian, and she said in her culture, you just kind of roll with it. You just kind of deal with it. I asked her about moving out. That's not an option. She's the youngest daughter of maybe like 6 children. And the mom has also been dealing with that. And she said that, at this point, the mom is just, the plan is to just keep her away from her father. Whenever he's home, she goes somewhere else in the house. So just for, and I think it's kind of a wake-up call, because I always flash back to our situation, but there's, currently we've got millions, billions, going through it. And it just made me sad, because she seems really outgoing, optimistic, but it's like there's a lot of underlying baggage. And like in her situation, for instructors that didn't know, they just feel like she's constantly off task, and that's not the case. She's coping the best way she knows how.
I think it's important to note too that you're not talking about a child. I mean, child as far as relationship, but this stuff lasts into adulthood. I was in a clubhouse room the other day, and someone was sharing their story about someone who was in college, and it wasn't until they were in college that they realized that it wasn't the dad's job to demonstrate what sexual intercourse was like with their daughter to prepare her for marriage. you know. And so, yeah, there's people that deal with this stuff for decades.
Some deal with it until they die, because that going through the healing process, even realizing that you need to, or the importance of going through a healing process, it doesn't happen, or it can be severely delayed for whatever reason, multiple reasons. So I know for me, the first time I personally kind of took it seriously to start to heal, it was not too long after we were separated, because, you know, through the state, the whole process is, you know, they set you up with a counselor. Unfortunately, the counselor that I had looked like Richard Gere, and, I was a 17-year-old young girl and things, and I'm just like, oh, he's cool, he's handsome, da 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 da. Like, and then, to me, I really didn't get, I feel like we weren't really talking about much of anything. Like, there's the whole thing where we were high-functioning kids. So I just felt like as long as we displayed, as long as we can respond to them and we can have a normal conversation, then we were fine. And, that came from our background, being under a lot of manipulation, being under just pressure to make everything seem normal. Yeah, it would just seem like a chat in the park or whatever. Like, that didn't really help me out. I think the counseling maybe was twice a month or something for an hour. But yeah, that didn't really affect me. I think my senior year, actually, because we were separated in my junior year. So in my senior year, I started a peer help group to help heal. Like, just so peers around my age, we can get together, we could talk about some things, and we can share some information. I was working with a counselor as well. She guided us on a few different activities. We did, I believe, at least one presentation at school, at our school. And then also just living in a group home with other young ladies who had been through something like that. That was a huge part of my healing as well, because it let me feel that I wasn't alone. Growing up the way we grew up, I was, we were all very, very isolated. And I didn't even realize that we were isolated, just not interacting with peers in that way, partially by choice and then partially kind of by necessity, and, how our, father figure had everything set up. So it opening me up like that really, really helped me. It just seemed like every conversation that I had about those things, the more weight was lifted off of my shoulders. So that's how, like, for me, like, at a young age, I just became really open about sharing and then having those conversations, because for me, it's been very cathartic. So, is there anything in particular that Ashley, Albert, that you guys do that seems to be more impactful than others when it comes to relieving, like, going through healing?
Well, I know for me, there's probably like a lot of things that I do. I try to be open about things as well. Referencing yesterday again, I was given 2 medications to give to a patient. One was Bespar and the other one was Seroquel. So I had to research them. I had to present on them before I passed those meds. When my classmate saw that I was getting Seroquel, she was like, oh, that's one of those mental meds. And I looked at her and I was like, yeah, I used to take it.
I remember.
Yeah. So I think that, and I've got a few classmates. I've got one that's borderline personality disorder. I've got one that's ADHD. I've got another one that's a similar condition. And I think that being open about those helps to kind of offset the stigma, because when people see some of these conditions, they see it as a crutch or, oh, that's a crazy person. So I feel like I still have that condition. So I use a lot of coping mechanisms for it, because I feel like I get triggered by reminiscing on our past. That's very triggering So I do try to be open about it. I did a presentation first semester and, mentioned a small segment about it in the form of a poem. And I feel like even why I do poetry, like that's a coping mechanism. I feel like my car is a coping mechanism. That was a huge reason I got that car. LP, they know my car, but you don't know my car. I have a 2020 Challenger. So, yeah. And
nice. Yeah, Mrs. LP loves challenges. She's like, "That's my car, you buy me that car right now."
Yeah, mine's purple.
First time I road trip to California, it was in a Challenger, but it was orange instead of burgundy.
Oh, nice. Okay.
That was Challenger.
So, I mean, some people might look at that and even I even had a classmate say, think I was a certain way because I had that car, and he was wrong. But it was a coping mechanism. Like that was a form of therapy for me because it's it's just fun to drive. It's a fun drive, and a lot of like herbal supplements because I don't. Even people have asked me, "How are you with that condition? What medication are you taking?" I'm like, nothing. Because I just try to gauge my stress levels. I try to get away from people if I'm getting stressed out. In class, I will disappear out of the classroom and go take a few laps and come back in if I see I'm getting extra anxious or I feel like that's why I have the cats. The cats are stress relief. So there's just a lot of things I try to implement in day-to-day life to offset, some of the stress and anxiety that comes with thinking too much. Because a part of my condition is your brain keeps going and it won't shut off, and I dwell a lot. What somebody might have an awkward conversation with somebody and think about it for 2 minutes. I think about it for 10 days.
Okay.
So, I have to, and I have to get out of the habit of apologizing. I used to always apologize, and I'm a little better about it. If it's because most of the time it was only awkward to me, and that other person can't even remember.
Right.
So I try to deal with that by chamomile, lavender, infusers. Bob Marley, there's a lot of things.
There's a Bob Marley drink in California. I haven't found it anywhere else, but it's got all the stuff in it. It's really good.
Okay, so
it's sold in only 30 states.
Look, that'll be the topic for the next episode. The Bob Marley.
It's just like a whole package of things throughout the years that I found out that work, that don't work. Because a decade ago, about between 13 to 15 years ago, as you guys know, most of you guys know, I was a mess. And even in graduate school, I was a mess. I would have to coming back from San Francisco back to Sacramento on the bus ride, I would have to put on meditations, if you will, of statements that keep repeating to try to get the thoughts out of my head.
Affirmations, maybe.
And it was just trying to replace my negative thoughts that I kept, fixating on for hours and hours and hours or days. With something positive. And since we're talking about positive, Air One and K-Love. Oh, I always play those in the car. So I feel like those kind of help too. And then when I drive to clinical, I try to listen to a church service as well on the way out there.
Yeah.
But I'm getting better about managing, I don't think it'll ever be perfect. But I'm trying to take things one bite at a time.
Yeah. I don't know if I've ever told you, but I'm super, super proud of you for managing you're managing your moods and your stress levels, especially without medication, because I tried that medication as I was when you were first administered that, and which of course I wasn't supposed to try it, but I have my reservations when it comes to those psychotropic medications because of how it turned our mom kind of not completely comatose, but just the negative side effects that she had from it, which one of those was sexual, and I kind of attribute to partially the source of me being abused. So, but still not so much for myself, but just for the horrible side effects that those medications give you. And then another thing that I took for myself, just growing up the way we grew up, seeing our parents argue and argue over the most benign topics. Even the reason why our mom passed was over an argument over who would put decorations on the Christmas tree. I personally vowed to not to stay away from stress, like overly stressful situations. It hasn't been until, well, honestly, certain things I've done things that are definitely stressful, but they've been within some type of an organized structure. Joining my sorority, joining the Marine Corps, those things. Cosmetology school, that was a breeze for me. But
I lost a lot of hair that day.
Well, you were supposed to. And I added some hair for you, so you got some extensions right afterwards. So, but I definitely have structured my life around that, even down to choosing a profession that was more stress-free. Like, I absolutely love being a hairstylist, where you can go to your workplace. You can usually, for the most part, wear anything you want to, as long as it's a bit upscale. You could talk the whole way through it, listen to music, laugh and joke. So that's our childhood and what we experienced. That is a big factor to why I chose that career. But then it's also another factor to why I haven't challenged myself to the fullest. Reason why I only had one kid up until now. So, because children can be extremely stressful, and not wanting to bring them into an environment that can severely damage them. It's very important to be mindful of all of those things, because sometimes we don't realize, unless we're cognizant of those things, how much it affects us. Even more recently, in these past 5 years, for myself personally, 2 years, learning how it physically affects us. Because I've still been that type of person to where, okay, there's a problem, go through a loss, go through some difficulty. Let me drown it with work. Let me, just on to the next thing. Spend a day or something dealing with it, and then boom, what's next? Which that's not completely helpful. It's not completely healthy. So never wanting anyone to acknowledge that there is some pain that you're dealing with, or that there is grief. So for yourself, not acknowledging it, and then not allowing anyone else to do that. And I remember, being more close to you, Ashley, when I was out in California. I recognized that, we did that. We both did that. So, and it's not healthy. It's like not being able to take a compliment, not being able to, you just feel those things off like a ninja, like, you just whack it away, throw it away. And it's when someone is trying to help, especially if they're doing it in a positive way, because sometimes we don't want everyone's attention, we don't want everyone's help. But when someone is genuinely trying to help, and they may have some really good resources for you, it's good to be able to be open to that, instead of just passing it off and trying to move forward onto the next thing too prematurely. Albert, has there been something that's been especially impactful for you?
Yeah, and I was just listening, honestly, because like some of the things that Ashley said, I relate to on so many levels. But there was a lot of ground you guys covered. We had mandated therapy. I had mandated therapy just the same. And when I was in a group home, I used to like to go to the field trip away. But once I was in a placement and I was stable and I was doing well in school, I hated going because I would miss classes and then I'd have to make up stuff all the time. At first I went to counseling because you got free juice, crackers, and stickers. But as I got older, I just didn't go anymore. And Dr. Forrest Talley was my last therapist, and he finally said, well, if you start giving me a little bit more of a disclosure, start answering my questions instead of manipulating, dodging, and doing all that type of stuff, I'll let you get out of counseling. So I finally disclosed enough to let him get me out of counseling, and I never looked back. That does not mean that I didn't have issues that I need to work through, and I'm like Ashley. I'm similar to both of you guys as far as the stress and managing it and dwelling and stuff, except that law enforcement, and I do have several kids and that I know of, and when it's an access of law, so I would have these conversations all the time with people that are very contentious conversations with very litigious people. And so my stress level and conversations that I'm dwelling on are infinite. Like always, I'm going over conversations or things I said in court. And so I really realized that I was getting too close to my lifeline friend of suicidal ideations, and I really need to take a step back, especially with COVID, my youngest being bored. And so I stopped working full-time altogether in 2020. But what has been helpful for me is that through this process, I've continued to do presentations about abuse, neglect, and domestic violence, because otherwise, what did I go through and what was the reason for it? So I give purpose and meaning to my childhood by sharing it and trying to prevent others from going through it. And through that process, it has been helpful because I am unburdening and I'm one bite at a time kind of working through some of my issues. And so it's been really helpful to share. And I think it's working because I did the children's book, but I also wrote my whole presentation basically out on the book, and that was a really difficult process. When I present, I could dissociate. It's like some other kid I'm talking about. But as I'm writing it, I have to put a lot more details in how I'm feeling, and I'm really sitting with it in the moment, and it's very, very difficult. It's a lot of that feel to feel. But I pretty much completed my manuscript. I sent it over to an editor, and so I'm okay with it not being perfect, and I'm taking it to the next step. And it's been 5 years, but I finally got back in a courtroom on the record just this last week. I accepted an appointment as a guardian, lied and I went to court and did all my thing, and the world kept turning. But it's taken me a while to get to that point where my stress level was low enough that I could go back into a court of law. And literally, we're on the record, right? We're trying to argue and stuff. So, but I have. So my Challenger is a 2006 Nissan Titan that's lifted a little bit. But for my kids, I like it. It's like monster truck, right? And so it's not like nothing too gaudy. Like I can actually go through a drive-through and stuff. It's subtle, but and then I have fish and I have plants and gardens and treehouse and I've got a million there. Actually, well, we both have been in the house. I've got a million things all over the place, and video games and kids and. So it's like I'm constantly trying to displace the negative thoughts and the negative memories with something positive. And I relate to so much of what you're saying. It's just really comforting to hear some of that stuff. Like the dwelling that you mentioned, Ashley. Oh my God. I'm going to, after this is done, I'm going to think about everything I did say or didn't say, or the fact that there were shadows behind me. And I can't stop that. Can't shut it down. Sleep has always been an issue. I struggle going to sleep and struggle staying asleep. And I take things to try to go to sleep and stuff. I don't take medication, everything you can get from is Walgreens, legally, without a prescription. But, like Uncensored and that type of stuff, whatever, just because I struggle. I can't shut my mind down. And so whenever it's a stressful thing that has my mind running, I just can't sleep. And so that adds to my stress level and everything else. So, so that's why I want to do this little social media post about you feel to heal, but it's okay to hit the snooze button because you got to be able to take a breather from time to time and just, I'll heal another day, right? Right now, I just want to be in the moment and kind of be a little more positive. So.
Yeah, I think we all struggle with that too, because I am definitely 10-day, 10-month, year-long dweller on certain things. Like if if it comes back to memory, or if it's severe enough, I'm definitely gonna continue to think about it, and then I'm going to make changes in my life based on it as well. But also, I am conscious that that is one of the reasons why our parents just did a lot of negative things. So another thing when it comes to that, understanding that the onset of schizophrenia can happen, well, we're all past the technical age that's supposed to be onset, but a lot of the times it's triggered in people who are, pretty high functioning, intelligent, but under a lot of stress. So dwelling on topics, negative topics and situations can create that. But then you can be obsessed about trying not to stress. So there is a balancing act, and balance is definitely something that I have worked on / struggled with. So, but just knowing that we have to go through the process, and actually taking steps to go through the process of healing, and actually, being cognizant of our triggers. I think that's very important. I think we're in a really good, each of us, we're all in a really good place with that, So I got I like Escalade. That's one of my little fun thing too. It's been a project, but it's I get a lot of good positive feedback from that. So I think, I'm happy to see us all in this state of mind, just as far as family goes, as far as what we've been through, and like being on one page with each other for this part in our life. It kind of reminds me of the positive things that we did growing up as kids, and
ACA radio.
Exactly, yeah. And actually, I don't know if you remember, but cars, that was a positive thing in our life, because and honestly, it was fun. Guys' dad, he loved to work on cars. He loved to put music in cars. I remember, Albert, when you were in college, you were making speaker boxes. So that stuff is fun. And for the past few years, I've had a studio in my basement. So all of that stuff, that's stemming from that. He used to work as a roadie for Tower Records. We literally went to see some concerts of some famous people when we were young. So I didn't remember it, but we were able to do that. So
I remember the music being a big deal. And apparently it still is. I spoke with Ashley. He was blasting his music when he got off of parole and stuff. But before
which is why he tried to stab somebody and took off.
See, I didn't know the stab part. I knew he got into altercation. Did not know he tried to stab somebody.
Yeah, I have his speakers.
So to me, he's incarcerated, and then after incarcerated, still angry, still alcoholic, still doing the same thing, still transient, running away. So I don't know if anything really changed. But before we wrap up, I do want to stay clear. These conversations are important for me, because we're still going back to the scalpel and machete, trying to piece together our childhood, our lived experiences and stuff. And so there's two things I want to say. One, did not know what the altercation was that led to mom's death. Did not know until you just now said that. I mean, I'm going to be dwelling on that for a while. Christmas decorations. But you saying that is not shocking at all. Right. I get it. And then something else is, I did the Unfiltered Stories video the other day, and you had mentioned there are some details that were off. And it's because, in part, we're piecing it together. But I think what you referenced specifically is when the sexual abuse had occurred. And I think I still have not watched the video. I've not brought myself to watch the video. But from what you told me, I think it was the 5 years as opposed to a longer period of time. And that's because in the records, it says that he and this is hard, I apologize, he started sexually abusing you when you were 11 or 12, once or twice a month from that point. But that's within the records. But because when we made our disclosures, we always tried to minimize what was going on, because we were always trying to protect it. So I apologize for getting that detail wrong, but it's because we're piecing it together. I'm using my memories, but I'm also using the records. And I know that clearly I do my presentation based on the bad information that's in the records, but that's just one of those pieces. So it's important to have these conversations so we can figure out who we are today by knowing where we came from. And so I appreciate you sharing that detail, although it's very difficult.
Yeah. 12 years old was when I actually, I guess, started to try and do something about it. Like realizing that maybe I could. I, first tried to tell mom, but then, that didn't work out very well. Another huge argument ensued. She ended up in a running hospital for about 30 days. And yeah, I was like the replacement wife. So never did that again. But yeah, we definitely did minimize facts and details. And that was the first thing that came to my mind when you told me that it was in the records that way. I was like, yeah, that's probably what happened. Hey, so aside from that, like, yeah, I try to. For me, like my memories of our childhood, part of my coping mechanism, which, and I've done this with many other situations, like how you were explaining the whole hammer incident. In my mind, it was father who did that. But you remember it as it being yourself, Albert, and like that kind of really just blew me away because of how I remember that situation. And I think that was the time when I was wearing the Tweety Bird shirt, which, I still love Tweety Bird, but I didn't even remember that. So just knowing that, how we each remember the same story and how we're all affected by it. And maybe that could be the next subject of something. Just one story, three stories within the story. So
our next conversation is going to be led by Ashley, entitled it "Cope with Me." I want to ask you guys, when you talk to each other and you think about these conversations, for me, I feel in a sense the love and the support and the concern and the compassion. I just need a one-word answer from each of you, starting with Claire. Yay or nay? Do you feel the same? Albert?
Yeah.
Ashley?
Yeah.
And that's what Sibling Bonds is all about. At the end of the day, no matter what trials and tribulations, no matter what ups and downs, ebbs and flows, no matter who was traumatized this way or that way, we're not doing a pissing contest. We're just having some uncensored conversations. We always have information available. And again, we have tons of resources in the show notes for each episode, not only of the Trigger Warning Talk podcast, but everything that we do is always purposeful. And if you
need, don't shoot me. I'm so sorry for interrupting, but I want to make sure that the full truth gets out there. So that's how we are now. But for years, I was fearful of something negative, and so I just didn't engage. I think with both of you guys, I've gone years without picking up the phone or calling or talking. So that's how we are now, and we're being intentional about it because that hasn't always been the case.
See?
Exactly.
If you would have let me finish, I would have said that. I would have added that to it. But you want to be producer.
I'm sure. My bad.
That's all I'm saying. See, that's when you have another man in the room. I want to thank you all so much and I will say, as long as you all are honest, we'll keep on having these conversations. Before we go, we end every episode of the Trigger Warning Talk podcast with a missing person case. This case involves 61-year-old Frederick CARUTHERS. He is from my hometown of St. Louis, Missouri. This case comes from ksdk.com. St. Louis police have issued an endangered silver advisory for a former resident of Northview Village nursing home who was last seen walking away from the facility on a day it abruptly closed its doors. Now, this story came out January 3rd of 2024, so it's only a couple days ago. The St. Louis Metro Police Department is searching for 61-year-old Frederick CARUTHERS, who was last seen December 15, 2023, walking away from the nursing home at 2415 North Kings Highway. CARUTHERS has brown eyes and gray hair. He is 5 feet 9 inches tall and weighs about 225 pounds. Police say he was wearing a brown hooded jacket, khaki pants, and dark tennis shoes with white shoelaces. Police say Carruthers has schizophrenia and is without needed medication. Anyone with information about his whereabouts is asked to call 911 or the St. Louis Police at 314-444-5504. The closure of Northview, St. Louis's largest nursing home, left about 170 residents scattered at new facilities throughout the city. The state health department spokeswoman confirmed last week that after the closure, the police had been notified one resident was still unaccounted for. For Claire, Ashley, and Albert, I'm your host, LP, and we're out.